In this video, we are going to show you how to create your very first Java program. So if you've done any development in the past, typically a very first step is to do Hello World. So that's exactly what we're going to do in this video. If you've never done a Hello World, don't worry. This is a very common exercise when we're getting used to a new language. So our objective here is to write a Java program that is going to output Hello World to the console. Very, very simple application, but this tells us a couple things. One, that you can actually write a Java program and get a little success with it. And two, that you have your environment properly set up for Java. Now, if you have not done so already, you need to have the Java JDK installed on your system. Previously in the course, we went through that. I have installation videos for Windows 10, Mac OS, and also Linux. So if you are using one of those flavors, you need to have those done. So you need to have the Java JRE installed, the Java JDK installed, and we will be using IntelliJ, so that also needs to be present, installed on your system. I've covered those previously. If you have not done any of that, you must get those installed. Otherwise, everything I show you in this video is not going to work. Now, in this step, we are going to show you how to create a brand new project using IntelliJ. After you start IntelliJ, if you have not done anything before, didn't have any open projects or whatnot, it will come to this screen right here. So this is a menu where IntelliJ doesn't have any projects open, and it's giving you the option to create a new project, import a project, or open one, or get one from source control. And in this example here, we want to go through and create a new project. So I'm going to just click on Create New Project. And now you can see I have a menu up here giving me a number of different options from Java, JavaFX, Maven, Gradle, Groovy, Kotlin, or just an empty project. And if you've installed and trying out IntelliJ Ultimate, you will have additional options. Here, we are not going to cover those, but the one that we want is Java. And also make sure that you have the Java JDK selected. If it's not selected or the wrong one is selected, change it here. And if you need to, you can click on the New button to tell IntelliJ where your JDK is installed. But you shouldn't have to do that if everything's been set up. As I showed you how to, just make sure that we have Java and the project SDK, Software Development Kit, is selected, and we'll just click Next. And there are a couple different things that we can do. One is a command line app. We are just going to do a very generic Java application, and all we got to do is say Next here. And it is going to default to your home directory, to Idea Projects. And I'm just going to call it My First Project, like so. And then click on the Finish button. And it's going to take it a second to open up. And typically, you're going to see tips of the day. And these are actually kind of handy. If you are new to IntelliJ, this will tell you a lot of little features that are very nice. And I've been working with IntelliJ for a long time, and I'll pay attention to these because I'm always learning new features of IntelliJ because there's a lot to it. So I'm just going to close out this tip of the day. You might have a second or two for the screen to come up, because what IntelliJ is going to do is go through and build an initial index. And depending on the speed of your system, that can take just a few seconds, or it might take 30 or 40 seconds where you don't see the screen yet. So now this has created the project. So you can see the project is now created. Says My First Project, shows me the path where it is on my system. This folder here, .idea, that is a hidden folder, and that's internal working files for IntelliJ itself, so we never have to look in there. I'm just going to close that out. SRC, that is the source folder. That is where any class files are going to go. Anything that we're developing with Java or programming files will go in there. And then this My First Project, IML, that is also an IntelliJ file. So that is the IntelliJ project file for this project. Now, in the course, we will be using IntelliJ quite a bit more. I do want to pause, just pump the brakes a little bit, and take a look at some very common features of IntelliJ, because I know some of you might be brand new to IntelliJ. We're just going to take a quick look at some very common features of what IntelliJ has to offer and why it is one of the top Java integrated development environments out there. So I'm going to jump over, take a look at some features, and then after that we'll get into creating our first Java program. In this video, we're going to do a quick review of some of the features of IntelliJ, just get you used to the landscape here a little bit. Now, one of the first things that we want to take a look at is preferences. And the preferences, I think under Windows, it's going to be under File. I could be wrong about that. And here you're going to have appearance and behavior. Remember, we had the theme. I said when we installed everything, you could change the theme of that. So this is one area where you could adjust the theme. You can set menus and toolbars. There's a number of different things that we can set up here. As far as your editor, you can change the font, the size, a lot of different options here. For example, there's an ongoing battle with developers, I think, for indentation. Should you either use spaces or tabs? I'm not going to get into that. I think spaces personally. But you can configure the IDE for a number of different options. I'm not going to be able to go through everything here as far as options, but one very important place is plugins. IntelliJ does have a very robust plugin environment. So as you grow as a Java developer, there's a lot of tools and features that you can add in to IntelliJ through plugins. So for example, I have Scala up here. Scala is an alternative JVM language. If I wanted to start developing in Scala, I have the Scala plugin that I can install. And again, remember, the more plugins that you install, the more resources it's going to take. So try to keep it lean, and that will help your IDE perform better. And right now we have everything installed that we need, so I'm not going to install in any additional plugins. And then up here under File, you can open up existing projects, go directly to a project, open up. Here's a recent projects, close the existing project, and we can do different imports and exports. One very important thing that I want to show you here is the invalidate caches restart. What happens, remember when we started up the project, and there was a little bit of a pause there while IntelliJ was going out indexing the project. Sometimes mistakes happen, and then that becomes invalid, and IntelliJ is not finding stuff that it should be finding. This is something that you can utilize to tell IntelliJ to go re-index that project. Do not have to use this very often. If you have something strange happening, an odd behavior where like IntelliJ is not finding a Java class that you think it should be, try this option. Often it will clear things up. I develop with IntelliJ nearly every day, and I use this maybe once a month, maybe twice a month tops. So if you do see something odd happening, this is a place to go. Now, a couple of other things that I want to point out to you here is navigate. You can go to specific classes. This allows you to search for things, very robust search capabilities. The refactoring menu. Remember, IntelliJ is to help with your developer productivity. We will be looking at additional features in here. There's features that help you change and modify your code. You can also come over here, and these are options to help generate code, to take away from some of the more mundane tasks of having to type stuff out. IntelliJ can automatically generate things for you, and we'll be seeing that coming up in the class as well. The other thing is build project. Remember, the Java code is going to start off in a text file, .java, go through the Java compiler to a .class file. This is what does that action. It will take all the Java source files in the source folder and compile those to Java class files. Now, build is different than rebuild. Build is going to be an incremental build, so it only builds what hasn't been changed. It only builds what has changed and skips over what has not changed. Rebuild will go through and delete everything and rebuild the project completely. So build is going to be a little bit faster than rebuild. That'll change as the project gets larger. And sometimes if you see something weird and build's not behaving properly, you'll go and just say rebuild, start over, and make sure that everything's right. Run as a dialog to actually run your Java code. VCS, so this is version control system, and we'll see that further down in the course where we'll start working with version control. And then help, remember we saw the tip of the day. You can bring up additional tips. And then also here, this is something I encourage you to explore on your own, demos and screencasts, so you can see additional features, more advanced features of IntelliJ. So this is going to be information from JetBrains and them telling you about features of IntelliJ that you can utilize. Usually pretty good. You'll find out some pretty good stuff in those. And then key map reference. I am running on Mac OS. So if you're on Windows, my key mappings are going to be a little bit different than Windows and Linux version. So here you can click on that and get additional information about the key mappings for your specific operating system. And then remember here we had under build, the build project, you have a shortcut for that right here. And here, this project structure, this is important under project settings, project, that's your project name. And if you ever need to change your SDK, that is where that is. And you can also adjust your language level. There are times where you're going to be on a different version of Java and only want to enable certain language features. Typically, you're going to be the same. And then another important one here is you can see sources. IntelliJ is going to look under the source folder here for any Java source file. So that's how we were telling it for that. And as we get into the course, we'll talk about adding test and resources. And these are options how we tell IntelliJ that we want to have these folders for test, a different folder for resources or test resources, or just ignore it altogether. So this will configure the behavior of IntelliJ for different project structures. So that was a very high-level overview of IntelliJ just to get you oriented. As we progress through the course, I will be showing you additional features of IntelliJ and things that will help you with your productivity and utilize the IntelliJ IDE better. Previously in the course, we talked about the anatomy of a Java program. So remember, we're going to have a Java class, and within that class are going to be methods. So in this section, we are going to go through and create our first Java class and add in a method, but we're going to treat this special. We're going to create it as a main method, and that main method is going to tell Java, this is the entry point for my program, and to execute this method. So I'm going to jump over to IntelliJ now and show you exactly how to do that. So to create our first class, what we want to do is come in here. We are going to say right click, and I'm going to say new Java class. And let's call this Hello World. Now you can see up the top here, it says public class Hello World. So that is the class decoration. And we have the opening bracket and the closing bracket. Now what we need to do to this is add in the main method. Remember, at a minimum, that's going to take void main, like so. And that sets up the main method. But there's a couple other things that we want to do to this method here. Remember, we want to set the access modifier to public. And we also need to give it the static keyword. So this is another Java keyword. And this basically tells Java that it can run it inside what's called a static context. It is not going to instantiate this as an object. And we will be covering that in future modules of the course. But very important for the main method to be static, because this is basically an entry point where you're telling Java you can just go run this method. Now the next thing we want to do is tell it to take in a string array. So we are going to do string and then the square bracket, and we'll call that args, like so. And this is going to be, remember we talked about the method arguments, so that is going to be the method arguments for our main method. So at this point here, we have a public class called Hello World, and it has one method on it that's called a main method, and that takes in an array of strings, array of text values, and that is going to get assigned to the variable called args or args. Now, so far we haven't looked at doing any Java statements. So statements are individual instructions for Java. Here what we want to do is tell Java that we want the message Hello World output to the console. So what we're going to have to do is use a Java class and method out of the JDK, or the JRE, the Java runtime, and we're going to tell Java that we want a message output to the console. So I'm going to jump over to IntelliJ and show you how to utilize Java to output a message to the console. Okay, we're going to go ahead and write our first statement. And this is going to be a very simple statement. And we are going to be calling upon a method from a library, a class that is within the Java JRE. So what we want to do is use a special class called system, and we are going to do the out, and we want to use print line. So the difference between print and print line is print is going to print out to the console. The print line is going to print and then enter. So it's going to give a line feed is the technical term. But think about, we're going to do print out a statement and hit enter afterwards. So that is what the print ln method is. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now we will say hello world, like so, because we're happy that we are saying hello world. Now at this point, I can ask IntelliJ to run it, and to execute this from IntelliJ, this becomes very easy. I'm just going to click right here, and I'm going to say run hello world main. And IntelliJ is going to go out. You can see down at the bottom there's building. It's gone out and compiled it, and we have the output right here on the console. So there is our hello world message. And what IntelliJ did in the background is we can see here we have hello world, and now we have under my first project a hello world class. So again, this is the source file. You can see here in the tab it says hello world.java. So this is just a simple text file. And here is hello world class. That is the compiled bytecode. And we can see that this is what was given to the JVM to execute. So IntelliJ behind the scenes, it compiled it using the Java compiler and then said, hey, JVM, run this program for us. And it ran that, and we got this output down in the bottom of the console. Now let's look at a couple common problems you might have if you're trying to run this and you're running into errors. Now, one very important thing is right here at the end of the line, the semicolon, and this is considered a statement terminator. This tells Java that this is the end of the statement. Now, if I forget that, it's really easy. We get a little squiggly here, a red line. IntelliJ is saying, hey, there's a problem. And we can see up here we have a little red icon in the top right corner. And also in the right-hand side, we have a red line that's indicating that that's a line with a problem. Now, if I try to run this, we can see here that we have an error that a semicolon is expected. So that's really easy to forget. If I come in and add in the semicolon, but I forget to close that parentheses, again, let me try to run that. I'm actually compiling there. Now we can see that it's saying that it's expecting that closing parentheses. So I'm going to add that. And if I forgot a quote, we can see IntelliJ's saying, hey, we got a problem here. You didn't terminate that string. If I come in and try to run it, again, we can see unclosed string literal. So a number of different problems that can trip you up when first getting used to Java. So we need to have that string closed. We need to have the parentheses closed, and we need to have that terminator there. So very simple. And keep an eye on IntelliJ because it will tell you if there's problems. Like if I did forget that parentheses, if I hover over it, we can see that IntelliJ is saying that is expected. So keep an eye on IntelliJ because it is going to tell you if there are problems. Again, this is giving you a hint saying illegal line end in string literal. Might not make a lot of sense, but you can also see that everything's green to the end. So IntelliJ is saying, hey, I don't know where the string ends. And if you accidentally had some extra characters in there too, that can be another problem. You can see right away, IntelliJ is popping up saying, I don't know what you want here. So it's highlighting it in red for a reason. And remember, the IntelliJ IDE, that is there to help make you more productive. So it's going to be highlighting errors as you go along. So the IntelliJ IDE has been doing a lot for us, making our lives a lot easier because it's been going through, taking that Java source file and running it through the Java compiler to bytecode and then running it. A lot of Java developers really don't know how to do this. They have to look it up and see how to do this because it happens for us so often. We know it's happening, but we really don't know how to actually do it manually. So I'm going to show you manually how to take that Java source file, which is just a text file. We are going to run it through the Java compiler, compile it down to bytecode, and then execute it from the command line so you can see what the IntelliJ IDE is doing for us and get an understanding of how that Java source file, which is just text, is compiled down to bytecode and then is utilized to output through the JVM a message to the console. So remember, IntelliJ is managing the build for us. It's working with Java in the background. And here under Out Production, My First Project, this is the compiled bytecode. And I'm going to replicate what IntelliJ did. So I'm going to come down here to Terminal and open up a command line window. If you're more comfortable, you can open up the Bash shell or command line in your operating system, but you do need to not navigate to where the project is. So if I come in here and do an ls, you can see that I'm in the project root and I want to cd to the source directory. And then I do an ls. Now you can see that I've got the Hello World Java listed there. So I'm in that proper directory. So I'm going to issue the clear command. That just clears up the screen. And I'm going to do Java C. This is the command that's going to compile it. I'm going to say -d. I'm going to call my out. So -d is for a directory. I'm telling the Java compiler to put the compiled files there. And here I want to say hello world. So I did HE and then tab, and tab is autocomplete, so it automatically completed for me from the command line. And that is a bash shell feature. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter at this point. It takes a second. And let me do an ls. And now you can see that I have a my out there. So if I cd to my out, now we can see that I have a hello world class. So here, this hello world Java, that is my source file. Now I have a subdirectory there, and that is called hello world class. Now to actually run that, let me do a clear here. That this command just clears the screen. Now I'm going to do Java, and I'm going to do a command called class path. This tells Java where to look. I'm going to do the dot notation that says to look in this current directory, and I'm going to do hello world class. So I'm telling Java to look in this directory for a class file called hello world class. I'm going to hit enter, and we can say it could not find main class. An easy mistake to make. I put in the file extension there. I do not want the file extension, so I added in the file extension. Now it can't find that. It's looking for a class called hello world.class, and that's an easy error to make. I wanted to do just hello world. So now I hit enter like so, and we can see that it ran that output. So did the exact same thing as that we did through the IDE here through two commands. One was the Java C command that compiled it down to bytecode, put it in this directory called myout. And then the second one, Java, that is telling the JVM to execute this Java class, and I got the output to the console. So I'm going to cd ... That's going to take me back to the source directory, clear this, and I want to clean up my workspace, so I'm going to delete that myout. So that command is rm-rf for remove and follow, and I'm going to say myout, hit enter. Now that compile directory is now removed from my source code directory. So I was just going through this for demo. Typically, you do not want to mix your source files with your compiled files. You can see how IntelliJ has a directory for source and it has a directory for out. I violated that convention as I was working through this. So to get rid of the terminal window, I can just type exit, and that closes out the terminal window.